Hello, everyone. This is Berl Schwartz from City Pulse. My guests today for a discussion of race relations in our community are both educators here in Lansing, Dr. Maxine Hankins Cain and Dr. Eugene Cain. First, welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
And then we just worked out some diplomacy here because they are both doctors. I asked Dr. Maxine Cain what we should call each to differentiate them, and she suggested doctor for her husband and Nana for herself. So I will be happy to do that. Dr. Eugene Cain, I'd like to start with you, if you'd be kind enough to just tell our viewers a bit about your background.
Okay, I'm a retired public school educator. I've been in the business I was in the business for 50 years. You name a position, I've had it, from classroom teacher to school superintendent to assistant state school superintendent, and also vice president of the Edison Project, their Southeast Regional vice president. And during the time I've worked from elementary through the university, I taught at Wayne State as an instructor for 4 years. And
did you lead the Shabazz Academies?
Yes, I was there. That was a wonderful experience for about 14 years, I believe.
Well, I want to talk to you about that because that's come up as one of the protest demands to reopen those academies. So we'll get to that. Nana, Dr. Maxine Hankins Cain, please fill us in on your background.
Well, I'm also an educator, having served in Lansing and a number of positions, and in Detroit. I gave 43 years of my life to education as a teacher, a principal, a superintendent of Sankofa Academy. I was downtown as the director of elementary education. I've been involved and still involved now with many organizations.
And I believe last year you were honored for your volunteer work for the Sister Cities Commission.
Absolutely. I was honored as a volunteer of the year, and felt really good about that. And I'm a member of the Lansing Regional Sister Cities, and that's a vital, I think, commission doing good work on behalf of people all over the world.
Well, very good. Now, I wanted to speak to both of you because I feel Lansing is at something of a crossroads right now on race relations. And last night, you may not be aware, but Mayor Andy Shore actually said that he plans to defund the police department to a limited extent, but the opening price tag he put on that was $100,000 to shift funds into social equity programs. The protesters didn't think that was nearly enough. But I'd like to get a sense from you on what kind of changes in the city budget, not necessarily dollar amounts, but where do you think money needs to be spent that would improve race relations in this community?
That's a good question. The expression defund, I think, will suggest to the pundits that you're trying to take away the resources of the local police department. But I think in terms of looking at the problems in our city, homelessness is one of the things that certainly we haven't really addressed from the standpoint of the city. We have, with the absence of Jones Jackson Johnson, I don't see any aggressive action in this particular regard. You can travel any street, especially the main venues, Michigan, Saginaw, Waverly, Grand River, and you see these people. And they're there from day in, day out. And I'm quite sure they need the funds. Also,
Let me interrupt to tell our listeners, in case you're not familiar with Joan Jackson Johnson, that she for many years led the Human Relations Department in Lansing, and then was suspended in December, and now 6 months later, and then she retired, but still 6 months later, there's no evidence that she did anything seriously wrong. Sorry to interrupt.
right, and I think also we need to take a serious look at education.
Mm-hmm.
I think that has been plastered over largely by PR. When you look into the bowels of the school buildings, you see that we haven't made an appreciable change academically. We built some new buildings, but academically, our kids, minority kids in particular, are still at the bottom of the ladder, so to speak. And you see no really aggressive action. At least I haven't seen them. Maybe the interim superintendent has something in mind that they're doing, but if they're doing something that's successful, we need to know about it, because the outcome based on what we see is not there. When I say outcome, I mean positive outcomes. They haven't really made a dent in dropouts. They take the reference and say, hey, we have fewer dropouts than we had last year, but you need to present a total program, the stats to the community, the last 5 years, 4 years, or what have you. So from whence we came.
Nana Cain, your thoughts on what you would do if a pot of money became available from the Lansing Police Department for social equity needs?
I believe what Dr. Cain has said are all good ideas. I think that we need to channel that money into maybe community centers where our children, our youth, our young people, high school students, etc., have some place to go after school where they can socialize, get tutored, etc. I think there also needs to be some funds set aside so where the police force can get a chance to interact with our young people and Black men. One of our problems is we don't know each other. We don't see each other as equals. So intense, purposeful, focused training needs to happen. I think that's not just a one-shot session, but a sustained way of training police officers and have them actually come in contact with these families, these Black families who have lost these sons and these daughters. They need to be in their faces to feel their pain and to realize that this is someone's child. I've had a chance to do some training at the Detroit Metropolitan Airport with some police officers. And when I first talked to them, my first words are, I don't see you as a police officer now. I see you as somebody's child, somebody's son, someone's daughter, somebody's husband, uncle, grandfather. And just like you want to go home to your wife, your mother, your father, your children, these Black men or Black ladies that you see on the streets, they too are someone's mother, father, sister, brother, child, a human being whose lives should be valued and respected. And I think that when we begin to have these policemen trained properly and sensitized to with whom they are arresting, that change will come. So community centers, intentional focused training, community policing, like we used to have at one time.
Berl, I want to pick up from what Maxine was talking about with the community centers. You see, in terms of this, hopefully a relationship between the Lansing School District and the community centers. See, I see those centers being staffed in part by professional educators. One of the reasons why Shabazz Academy was successful academically with our student clientele, which was 99% poor, we extended the school day. Kids were at Shabazz from about 7:45 until about 7 o'clock in the evening, Monday through Thursday. And we gave them meals, but we also tutored them. Now they had the chance to play a little basketball, a little chess, and what have you. But the main point, we realized that we had a resource within that building that many of them did not have at home. And we provided that.
That's his cell phone.
Yeah, so
That's
Blues enthusiast.
that's my blues. That's BB. but you see where I'm going. In other words, not only are we talking about rethinking the resources of the police department, we're also thinking about rethinking the resources of the school district as well.
The demands that the protesters have made include reopening the Shabazz Academies and the Black Child and Family Institute. Dr. Eugene Cain, you led the Shabazz Academies. Are those goals you think make sense?
Yeah, they make a lot of sense. One thing that we were able to do, I think Maxine at Sankofa and me at Shabazz, we had freedom. We had freedom as administrators to be innovative, to be challenging. And we challenge people in a whole different ways. You don't come to PTA meeting, I'll send a bus to pick you up.
No excuses.
No excuses. You know, and some people saw that as non-traditional, but it was effective. I think that when you are looking at the problems that we are having here, as identified in your press, you got to think out of the box, because what we're doing now is not working.
And speaking of the Black Child Family Institute, my dear friend Barbara Roberts Mason, of course, is the founder of that organization. And it is highly, highly underfunded, but it is still going. And if she had the funding, if they had the funding that they needed to have, what a big difference that would make in the community. I mean, after school tutoring, summer programs involving technology and all kinds of things. So the Black Child Family Institute and the reopening of Shabazz would be two, I think, significant gains for this community, but well funded.
Initially, when that institution opened under Dr. Halleck's leadership, he provided a school staff to that facility.
So I am happy to talk more about education. Obviously, that's an important goal of the protests that are going on right now. But I wanted to get your views on some other things that the protesters are calling for. They have called for de-escalation and non-bias training for the police. And Dr. Nana Cain, you touched actually on one of their points, that this is not something you do in the classroom. This is getting the police out, actually talking to people. I wanted to ask you both, we have not seen an incident as awful, of course, who has, I guess, of the murder of George Floyd in front of video cameras, boldness that is unmatched by other highly publicized deaths. But is there a problem with the police in this community? Nana Cain, I'd like to start with you.
Well, I think in all departments, the police department or any place else, you're going to have mostly people with good intentions. And in most settings, you have some people who do not value or appreciate diversity and inclusion. So in those cases, we're going to have to find a way to weed out the ones who don't value diversity. Even before they are hired, there needs to be a serious background check, delving into their thinking so that we don't hire them initially. And I think that it needs to start in the police department, but also in the mayor's division. Mayor Andy Shore, I think is a good person, but I've heard some things about the culture of that workplace that to me are not appropriate. So since he is the mayor, the line leader, I think it has to start with him. I think that he can listen to the protesters if he wants to, but listening is one thing and acting is another. I know, go ahead.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt.
I know most of the people who have been either fired with no cause or some who have left because they have viewed the environment downtown as uncomfortable, stressful, with racial overtones. And these are people I've known for years, highly respected. So when these people are telling me that this is the situation downtown, something needs to happen. The mayor not only needs to listen and establish a team, get a plan of action established, but the plan has to be actualized, implemented, and monitored so that true systematic changes are made not only in the police department, but also in the mayor's quarters.
And both Dr. Cains, but Dr. Eugene Cain, do you share those? Views? And
absolutely. And for any Black man in America, we have experienced what I would say many negative encounters with the police. And it's almost as if when you see them, based on our past experiences with them, we know that chances are we're going to have a negative conversation with the police. We're going to have a situation where they try to dominate, they try to belittle you, you shut up and what have you. Now, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and I tell my wife this. Every other Sunday, I was about 17, I would go on a date. And every other Sunday, coming back home about 9 o'clock in the evening, it was up against the wall, nigga. I know you have a knife. And I was searched by the same cop.
So
you know,
it was harassment.
That was harassment. And that's common, unfortunately. But it becomes so ingrained in your mind that when they do good deeds, You want to say, oh my God, I don't believe this. And I was the recipient of a good deed. One day, my car went out on me over here near Rosemary, off of Michigan. My car went off. I went out on me, and I couldn't get it started. I had the flasher on and what have you. A police officer, I think from Lansing Township, came up. He said, "Hi, sir. Look like we got a problem here." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, we need to get it off the road." And that guy helped me push the car. And I shook his hand because I've never seen that. Now, I know, and Maxine was referring to this, there's some good cops out there, but the bad, you see, when the bad reveals itself, the police institution protects them. And sometimes mayors are complicit because they don't want to upset the union.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not a distant problem in Birmingham, Alabama, albeit we haven't seen the kind of brutality historically we saw it in Birmingham. But you're saying that there is a problem here in Lansing as well.
Yes. Lansing is no exception. Lansing, I interviewed 10 Black men. They'll tell you all their police encounter stories, gladly. And they're not good.
Dr. Nana Cain, further thoughts on that?
I often say this. I often say that I am 73 years old, and I have been facing racism for all of my life. I wear natural, I wear layered clothes, and I can go into a store and I can see the eyes on me. In fact, it happened at a store. I was going to get some support stockings or something. And this guy, probably a manager, began to follow me. And I think he lost sight of me. Then I looked to my right, and there he was. We were facing each other, and he was just shocked to see me. He found out where this potential thief, was. But I think that in these days and times, talking about putting a knee on the neck of George Floyd, we have to put a knee on the neck of racism, inequality, injustice, so that it cannot breathe.
One of the protesters 2 nights ago said to the mayor as he stood outside on the street in front of his house talking to them, shouted out, if you are, something along the lines of, if you're uncomfortable, that's how we feel all the time. Is that true in Lansing, do you think, for many African Americans?
To feel uncomfortable?
All the time.
I mean, I don't feel uncomfortable all the time. In fact, we chose Lansing. When we first came to this area, our friends were saying, move to Okemos, move to East Lansing, don't move to Lansing. But my husband said he wanted his sons to live someplace where they could get their hair cut. And because we value diversity, we purposely chose to live in Lansing. Lansing has been good to our sons. Our sons finished Sexton High School. Lansing has some awesome things about it. And at the same time, Lansing, like cities all over the country, have some challenges. And I think with the person in the White House, a lot of wounds have been opened. And I think that I'm glad that they're opened, because they have never healed. And I think with the what has happened recently, we need to see some substantial changes in the cities that'll make life in Lansing even better than it is.
Berl, will you raise that comment that the protester said to the mayor again? What
Yeah,
did he say?
he said, yeah, sensing the mayor was uncomfortable in the situation Saturday night, this protester shouted out, "We're uncomfortable all the time."
Yeah, we are uncomfortable, and let me say, I don't know the mayor. Uh, um,
Now
uh,
that's very telling because you are a prominent member of this community, not just the black
yeah,
community.
so they say.
It's very
But I've had two
surprising.
encounters that were not so good with him. You recall, I don't know if you were there or not, or your paper was represented. I went to the city council meeting. It was regarding Joan Jackson Johnson. And I went there seeking information. And the question that I raised of the mayor was whether or not Joan Jackson was given due process, and that they have to go to the extent that they did to get rid of her. And he deferred, he punted, and he said that the city attorney made that decision. And I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe that. Now, you can go back and find that. I just couldn't believe that. Now, the second time I had a meeting with the mayor, we for almost 50 years at our home have had an annual blues party. And the purpose of the party is to get Lansing together in our backyard, which could hold well over 100 people. And when you come to this party, you see everybody. You see everybody from garbage collectors to brain surgeons. And we tell them not to use their titles. Well, the mayor came last year, and I called Marilyn Plummer. And by the way, Marilyn is the only reason I really voted for the mayor, because I didn't know him, but I know Marilyn, and she's a good person.
Marilyn is still on his staff, although she's retired
Yeah,
month, but
yes.
she's a community liaison.
When we gave the mayor an opportunity to speak before all of these people, and by the way, at this particular blues party was his wedding photographer from Mount Pleasant. And I thought that was really interesting. The mayor only stayed maybe 10 minutes, and he started out with an apology. He said, "Well, I gotta go home and what have you." The man didn't interact with the folks. Well, I just put it in my noggin and say, well, but what happened there, a number of the guests later on said he missed his opportunity to really, really talk to the people of Lansing, because they're all here in your backyard. And so those two encounters, to me, suggest that he might make good speeches. He might be eloquent at making speeches. My thing is, a person acts on the basis of what they perceive to be true. And his truth, based on his non-actions, suggests to me that he thinks everything is okay. It ain't okay.
Let me add to that. I do know the mayor, and he knows me by name. And he and his wife and his son and daughter and others traveled to Japan last year sometimes. And
with Sister Cities.
With Sister Cities. And he is not an elegant speaker. And elegant speeches are good. You don't have to have that skill, but you do have to have good leadership skills. And I voted for him I was a strong supporter of him. I saw him at all community functions, etc. But I'm talking about the time that we're facing right now. I think that he needs to show more leadership. Number one, he has to say, yes, indeed, we have a problem. That life is a series of problems to be solved. Lansing has a problem, and I'm owning up to that problem. And he has to meet with the protesters, the leaders, listen to them, and they have to address this problem. It's a huge problem, and it's not going to get better if they brush it under a rug. The protesters would not have gone to his house had he listened to them. And they went to his home as a result of them feeling that, no, my voice isn't being heard. The mayor's wife and 2 children are there, and that's threatening. He needs to deal with the problem as the mayor of Lansing, where it needs to be dealt.
All right. Well, I want to thank both of you very much, and I hope perhaps down the road we could talk again to see whether you think progress is being made or not. And I was honored that you let me call you Nana. But I want to thank Dr. Maxine Hankins Cain and Dr. Eugene Cain for being on City Pulse, and everyone who has watched this. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good day.